Hi, and welcome to our conversation following Bart's message. The message is available on our website. You can have a look at it. Seeing that you're seeing this, it's likely that you've seen that, but you don't actually have to have seen Bart's message to go ahead and watch this part. We're just going to act like we're having a cup of coffee together and talk about our thoughts on what Bart just shared about. It's Palm Sunday, so Bart has the palm fronds behind his head. Looking good, Bart. And talked about...
That's me right here.
The essence of the conversation was, how do we hold authentic emotions in the midst of difficult context, in the midst of difficult circumstances? So Jesus, heading towards the cross on Palm Sunday, was in the midst of a very exciting set of circumstances. So can he authentically demonstrate and experience joy in the midst of heading towards something that's very hard? So for those of us in the midst of this corona pandemic right now, we have a lot of conflicting emotions, and how do we navigate those well? So Bart, thanks for inviting us into that space of how do we hold things that are in tension, and how'd it go for you when you got done with the talk? How'd it feel?
Not that good. It's really odd. I'm used to having people in front of me. I can read their faces. I know their names. So it's hard to envision. In fact, right now, you'll find this funny. I have a picture of my daughter taped to my computer screen so that I can just above it, just so I can remember that there's people out there. So I don't know, when you finish teaching, I think of it as teaching more than preaching. You always wonder, how did it go? And so I'm always a little more critical. So I actually love this kind of context where you guys can ask questions or give thoughts. I've really enjoyed this. And I'm getting used to speaking to nobody. I mean, it feels like I'm speaking to nobody, but actually, I guess there's, over 1,000 people listening to this. So I have to remember that. And I welcome all of you to this.
Hi. Well, I liked it. And I know what it feels like to be like, there's no feedback. I can't tell how that was going. And I liked the Lewis. I liked all those quotes. And what I did is I made a diagram of 4 words that I thought the talk circled around. I'm going to go back to my notes here for a second. So you contrasted context as being a positive thing. Jesus's emotions in the midst of his journey towards the cross were set in the context of knowing what was happening, knowing where he was going, also where he had been. And you contrasted that with circumstances. So circumstances can be throwing off our emotions, but really it's the context that should define them. And then you talked about 2 other words, perspective and being present. So on my notes, I put context versus circumstances, and then I put perspective over the top, and I put present at the bottom, because the perspective allows us to see that bigger context, and then the present allows us to live in that space where we can actually do anything. It's whether it's receiving God's grace in the midst of this present moment, or actually moving into our vocations that we're called into in the midst of this present moment. So anything you wanted to add about those 4 words that I was picking up on?
Yeah.
Well, I loved Bart's emphasis on being present in what we're doing.
You guys all froze on me, so I don't know what to do here.
That's okay. We'll keep on talking. I loved having the image of living where we are and really fully embracing it, because it's particularly the things that Bart talked about with anxiety, maybe panicking, dwelling on the things that we can't change, but rather living in where we are and working, doing what we are supposed to do, what's in front of us, and whatever that is. And it may have changed over the last few weeks. Our job may have changed. Like my job is here right now, loving these kids. But I loved the image of that because it gives us the right perspective. So I guess that's the same as what you're talking about.
Bart, we lost you. Welcome back.
Sometimes I don't want to hear my sermon again, so I just leave. No, I thought your summary of my sermon was better than my sermon. So way to go.
Well, I was also struck by something that may not be true at all, but youthful, like energetic, put my hand to the plow, I got to do stuff, versus wisdom of age and saying I can only do things about the certain things I can do something about. So you didn't touch on that in the talk at all, but there was part of me that was like, is this Lewis being wise and me being overly just, I can only affect my circumstance by actually changing things with my action?
Mm-hmm. No, I think, that's a great question. And I wasn't really thinking about that when I gave the talk, but it's a good question, because I really have come, as you know, David, you and I've talked a lot about this. I've really come to believe in stages of life, both in our psychological and emotional development. That's pretty clear with all the psychology that has studied that, developmental psychology, but also on the spiritual level. And I know it's not always age related, and you and I have had that conversation, that you can have very wise young people and very, silly old people. And I agree with all that. But the way I think it is designed in the best sense is that as we age, we're maturing spiritually, emotionally, intellectually as well. And so there's something about age appropriate wisdom versus activity. And so at your stage in life, in your early 40s, you're ready to charge, you're ready to change things, you're ready to, like you said, put your hand to the plow. I think that's good. I think that's warranted. And at my stage in life, in this particular situation, it has to do with, actual vulnerability to the virus, but I certainly have gobs of energy. I still love to do things, but I'm finding that at this stage, my context is allowing me to take more time for reflection, for prayer, or really thinking things over before I act, choosing to use my time in a way that fits my gifting, things like that. And I think that's appropriate. I think they both are.
Yeah, I was identifying with the students that Lewis was talking to in the midst of war, saying, what's the point of studying when there's a war on?
Absolutely.
And I felt that difference around our household. We use the language of the woe versus the go. And there are times when we play different roles in that, but the wisdom of woe and the wisdom of go.
Yeah, well, that's good. And there's a time for woe when you're young also, in other words, slow down. And there's a time for go when you're older as well. For example, some of the work we do in Guatemala, it takes a lot of go, to be honest. To get down to Guatemala, going down there for 25 years. And now with the coronavirus, the hospital we started, it's taken a lot of energy to figure out how do we help them do what they need to do down there. So that's a time where I'm not, the call isn't for me to sit back and reflect and pray. The call is for me to jump on a conference call with people in Guatemala. So I think it can go both ways. But I do think that I see many older people, as I've said from the pulpit, who have not become elders. They're old, but they're not elders. They're elderly, but they're not elders. And I think your generation needs some folks who are in their own hearts becoming elders. And by that, I mean sort of steeping in what they've experienced, thinking it through, praying it through, staying within their lane, so to speak, where their gifting is. So, and I think Lewis was making a different point as well, that in the midst of a war, there's still good, normal things to do. And I'm not sure my talk made that as clear as I wish it had. I wanted to say, you're living your ordinary life in the midst of this crisis. And ordinary is fine, just like studying in wartime. We need people after the war who've been studying, and in this situation we're in, we need, actually our greatest civic duty is to stay out of the way, according to all the health experts. And so that means we've got other things to do around our house and with our families, or through Skype or email or phone calls. So to somehow be who we are right in this moment, and to find joy there. to find that that was the other thing I wanted to get across, is that I think Jesus was really joyful on Palm Sunday, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, just he knew this was a fickle crowd. He knew this praise wouldn't last. He knew where he was heading, and yet he entered into that joy. And I think in the midst of some of our struggles here, there are joys for us to enter into with family, with friends, with the solitude even.
Totally agree. And that's something that I want to hear more messages about, to say, yeah, enter into what is beautiful without undermining what's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen, what jumped out to you about other parts of the talk?
I was really struck by the C.S. Lewis passage, actually. I love the idea that we should view each day living in the present, like this is where we are, and not with fear, but with joyfulness, with a sense of expectation that God has this in mind for us. This is where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to do what's in front of us, like, and it might look different. Each person might look different from each other. But sorry, lots of stuff happening at my house.
That's perfect.
Dogs, kids. But you guys just give me a second. But man, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Present moment. It's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, just being where you are and acknowledging that one thing I love is the acknowledgement of the normal things in life that are our simple joys. God desires us to have those things, take joy in them. I have a problem sometimes doing that personally, because I like to think of the big picture and the lofty goals and the things that I'm going to accomplish in the future, and not so much like what is happening today, this hour, with the blessings that God gives me today.
That's great, Kathleen. Even the interruptions right there, as David said.
I know, right?
That's like a great illustration of my talk. I mean, you've got lots of family packed in your house. I remember the one day I was talking to you on the phone, and you and your kids were doing various things, and I don't know which one it was, but I won't use their name. I'll use a fake name. I'll say Sarah. I remember you're talking to me about the liturgy, and you go, Sarah, do not put the cat in the mailbox. It probably wasn't funny to you at the moment, but to me, I just thought, oh, those are great moments in a family's life. And as I look back in life, I think I missed a lot of those, because like you, Kathleen, I'm thinking, I want to change this, and I wanted to change the whole world. I was raring to go, and sometimes I missed what was right in front of me. And I think that's true of any stage in life. When Jesus says in Matthew 6, don't worry about all these other things, wondering what you're going to eat or drink or what you're going to wear. God knows you need them all. Set your heart on his kingdom and his goodness. And all the rest of this will come as a matter of course. And don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow can take care of itself. One day's trouble's enough for one day. One cat in a mailbox is enough for one day.
Well, I did. Well, I was listening about how you were describing Christ's entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and I had never actually thought about his attitude, knowing what was coming up, and just his ability to sit in a place of rejoicing with the people, and yet he has this knowledge in his heart. That was really profound to me too. I thought, wow, that is how we should live no matter what. Just like, okay, God, here's today, and I am gonna live it the best that I can. Not all doom and gloom, and not.
I had a thought today, Linda, and I've been telling Linda I have not had it in me to sit and do quiet meditation and things like that. I'm even on a good day, I'm not that great at that. I'm better at walking and meditating. But we did a sitting meditation today, and we did what's called Lectio Divina, where you take a scripture passage and you read it through once, and then you highlight the parts that hit you. And then you take 20 minutes or 15, I think we took, of silence, and you just ponder that passage. Then you read it again after that. And then you take 5 minutes of silence and you ask the Lord to speak to you. And frankly, I wasn't in the mood to do it, but I knew Linda was, so I decided to go with it. And lo and behold, good stuff happened. And in the midst of it, I had this image come to my mind of that maybe applies to what we're talking about here. I pictured this rushing river. It just kind of came to me, and when you're doing that type of a contemplative prayer, you just kind of go with it. And there was this rushing river, like a Colorado river, and it was springtime. It was flowing really fast, kind of dangerous. And I had a raft. I had a yellow raft. And I was standing on the bank, and I had it near the water. And then it was touching the water. I could feel it like pulling us out right away, pulling me out. I think it was just me. And there was this moment where I had to decide, am I going to get in the raft and shove off? I mean, actually let go of land with my feet. And I knew as soon as I did, it would be out in the flow of this river with virtually no control. Even if you have oars, you can kind of control around a rock or something. And that image helped me. It made me think, this is a moment where, can I trust unreservedly? Can I surrender without reservation? Can I jump into the raft and let it take me where it's going to go, not being able to control it like a boat with a motor or on a calm day in a calm river, just to go with it. And that was a helpful image for me, because in the larger context, we have a God we can trust. That doesn't mean that hard things won't happen. So that doesn't mean financially we might not get wrecked, or physically we might not get a disease, but somehow in the larger picture, we've been taken very well care of, and God will take very good care of us, even when the moment comes for us to leave this earth, whenever that will be. But that leaving without reservation and going with the flow in a sense of trust was a helpful image to me.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thanks to y'all. It's good talking about this stuff. And Bart, for Holy Week this week, we'll stay in touch with ways that we can enter deeper into authentic emotions in the midst of hard things and joyful things. So
and before you close this off, let me just mention to those listening that there will be a Good Friday service via our website, so you can find that. There'll be a simple message from me and some beautiful music from Kathleen. And then on Easter Sunday, of course, we will have a regular sort of online service. And I do honestly say welcome to all you from our online community who I probably haven't even met, but we're glad you're with us.